Righto, here's the next update of how the little compressor overhaul's going. We'll just step around real quick and go through a bit of stuff. So I've had the pulley off. I've changed both bearings in the motor. One in this end, one in this end. This one was pretty dodgy. Makes it easier on a nameplate. On a good motor it will say the bearing number, which makes it a lot easier. So down in here it says 6307 and a 630 something else, which I can't quite see. There we go, you can see it there. And it says ZZ, which is shielded. Here's the two old bearings, like I said. ZZ, which is two metal shields. This is the pulley end, bigger bearing to take any load from the belt, which gets pulled on the shaft. So the bigger bearing there, smaller bearing down the fan end, both were shielded. So I replaced both of those because this one here was dodgy. I replaced them both with sealed bearings, greased for life, and hopefully forget about it. So that's the motor done. I just got to clean the cowl and put it back on and see how much paint's left on it. I might repaint that yet. We'll see what happens. As far as the compressor goes, I've had this section here off at this split. They call this the tank on this particular one. Little relief valve. I've tested that. Let's set it the right pressure. Up here is where the air oil separator sits. It screws on here, so I've had all this out, cleaned all this. And what's happened with this compressor, someone's run the wrong oil in it, and it's reacted and absolutely trashed the oil. So a very, very thick varnish throughout the entire internals of this compressor, which took a lot of getting out. So the only thing I could find that could break it down, degreasers, solvents, bloody you name it, diesel, petrol, anything I could find, spirits, nothing would break that resin down. So in the end, I used my Old Faithful, which is the cheapest, nastiest oven cleaner you can find, and that broke it down really, really well. So I still had to scrub it, but it took it up beautiful. And you can see, like here, all of this here was just a really thick brown varnish, and now that's all nice and clean steel again. So that's sort of how good the oven cleaner works. So the whole tank's been cleaned out. Minimum pressure valve was stuck. This, I believe, what happens is this is sitting in the discharge port, so this is the main air delivery out of the compressor. What it does, I think, is it's a little pilot operated valve that supplies a tiny little bit of pressure to force oil from the sump up into the compressor end. The screw, which I've got taped up at the moment, is forcing air into this receiver, or they call it the tank. I'll go around the other side and you get a bit of a better picture. As the air leaves through a port, there's a tube inside here that fires the air up against the surface of the back wall of this tank. So this is cast. This is quite thick. It's probably you know, close to 1/2 inch thick, 12 millimeters. So quite substantial, and it blasts the air at this back wall. So as the air oil mist hits this back wall, that's the first way of separating the oil from the air, and then the rest of the particles or the mist gets stuck to the wall, settles back down to the bottom of the tank. The air then is sitting in here in the top, which then comes up through two holes in this casting, comes up into the air oil separator, which I've bought a new one. It was about 60 bucks just for that. Just looks like a little spin-on cartridge filter, but I think all that's inside it is a tightly packed gauze just to create turbulence. So again, as the air flows through with the oil mist in it, the oil particles are more than likely going to run into something and stick to it. So after a while, enough oil collects on those fibres and then makes its way down to the bottom and simply just drains back in to the tank. By the time it comes up here, it's had to pass through all that medium, down the hole it goes, and that's the pressure line that comes back out and supplies air to the minimum pressure valve, and then the line out to the aftercooler. So that's pretty simple. What else they've done is this line. In here is a small check valve and an orifice. On YouTube there's the whole sort of workshop service series of videos for this exact series compressor. Tells you how to pull it apart, what to do and all that, so I won't go into any of that because you can just watch those videos if you want to see how to service it. One of the serviceable components is this, making sure this orifice is clear and making sure that that check valves are right around the right way. This was all gummed up with that same resin, and that check valve was actually stuck. So I freed all that up, cleaned it all out. It works properly. I've cleaned all these lines, everything. But this line actually comes, as you can see, straight through around, back over the top into here, and actually comes up out through this tiny little gap where my fingernail is. So when all of this is apart, you blow air down through here and just ensure that there's a nice stream of air coming up this tube. So going on with this, the spare parts that I've purchased from ELGI, ELGI, are a brand new Air Oil Separator. We also got a thermal valve kit, but the whole thing comes. This whole housing comes with the thermal valve, the plunger, all the O-rings. I'll go into this a bit when I change this because there's a story with this as well. But you get this whole, or finished up getting this whole thing. That's when I ordered it. That's what came. So all of this is getting changed. What else? Obviously the previous video about removing the shaft sleeve with the old. Here's the old housing that held the old sleeve. Here's the old PTFE seal. Okay, we're going to change this thermal valve assembly. I'll just zoom in a bit and we'll pull it apart and I'll show you how it's done. Righto, 4 bolts. One. Now I've noticed on the videos that ELGI have on YouTube about working on this drain hole, I think in their video, is up there. Now when I pulled mine apart and I had a look and it was down here, and I thought, oh, that's a bit odd, but this actually lines up with the galley in there, and if we'll see when I take this off, there's nothing up there, so I don't know why ELGI have it like that. Maybe they did a trial run or something before the video and got it backwards, I don't know. Right, so I've taken those 4 out and you can see, oh, there we go. You can see that? They're quite small. So I've got some longer ones, and the housing's got jack and screws on it. I'll put them in. Yeah, see? That one goes into a hole. But if we jack this one, whole housing comes out. See, we're actually withdrawing it. It's coming out. There we go. And out she comes. Now, the first time I took this out, because this is the second time I took this out, I could feel a lot of resistance. And as I pulled it out, I noticed that these O-rings all got cut. It cut them. I thought, what cut them? So when I had a closer look, okay, you can see in the bore of this, I'll just get the camera close enough so that the light comes on. You see that drilling, it goes up and down through the side of this bore. There's one there and one there. Now, they were that razor sharp that no matter what you did, when you pushed the O-ring in or out, it cut it. So when I first pulled that assembly out and I looked in there, I could see the slither of rubber sitting in there, and I thought, wow. And just touching it with your finger, man, it was sharp, sharp, sharp. So I got in there with a very small stone on a burr grinder and I rounded all of those edges out, and both sides, and then of course it left a lot of abrasives in here. And this is the tank. Let's go back, let's turn the light off. I had this whole tank off, obviously, like I said earlier, split at this split line, and I finished up flushing this whole thing out very a lot of times. Basically, I didn't want any abrasive in there. Got it all out and cleaned all that up, and then I got some little tweezers and I pulled the bits of rubber out that were in there, made sure all of those galleys were clean. So that's not a very good design at all. Not knowing what was coming in the thermal valve, I went and bought brand new O-rings from Allied in cans, or whatever they are, a couple of cents or 30 cents each if you're lucky. I can't remember what they cost, but there wasn't much. So I bought those O-rings new. That's just a static face one. I might have bought it new as well, that one on the front. Not knowing that you get all of this in the kit when the new valve turns up. So let's have a quick look at that and we'll install it. Oh, while we're here too, you can also see, once the light turns back on, maybe it's not gonna, that I honed the inside of that bore just to make sure there were no burrs or nothing like that. It was all gonna be a neat fit. So as you can see, that's right in the bottom of the tank. Here's the oil level. The oil level, I think, sits halfway up this sight glass from memory. So all of this is submerged. When it builds pressure, there's a galley through here that runs right into the bottom of the tank. No, it's not. It's this one, sorry. I believe that's right. This one's where the oil's fed from. So because this is under pressure, this whole tank, the oil's pushed from the air pressure up through here. It's allowed to come up through the hole in there and pass between these different segments depending on what this thermal valve's doing, and it lets it port between the ports to either block it off, open it up, do whatever it's ever going to do. And this is all submerged in the hot oil, see? So the thermal valve sits inside here, and it's just a spool that works in on there. It's nothing special, just brass on this anodized aluminium housing. That's about it. Righto, so the thermal valve replacement that they sent, the lady did tell me there's an upgrade, but I was just having a look and it is quite different. So you can see on the original one, this is the one that came out, each port isolated by an O-ring. So this chamber here kept separate from this chamber. This is how it came straight out of the packet, the new one. You can see they're not separated whatsoever, so I guess there's commonality between wherever the oil wants to go between them, can do whatever it wants. You can see here there's a reduced diameter with an O-ring, which doesn't fit anything in the bore whatsoever. It's just a parallel hole straight through there, so there's something not right there. I'll quickly have a look. This is the part number they sent for the new one, which they reckon's the upgrade, which I can't see it's going to be any good, so I'm going to get back on to LG and find out what the story is there. But while we're on that, let's just have a quick look at this here. There's a tiny little sticker here. I mean, this, you got to really watch stuff like this. So manufacturers put a sticker on the end, all pretty sticker, all deadly, but guess what? This is sitting in the oil. Eventually, you might find that adhesive on that sticker comes off. It's a very tough plastic sticker. So all of a sudden, you got this sticker floating around, potentially getting stuck in an oil galley and blocking oil flow off. It's not real smart putting things like that where that can come off and cause problems. Things that run in oil shouldn't have stickers on them. Alright, I'll get on to LG and find out what the story is with that. In the meantime, I'll put this one in and keep moving. So for now we're going to put the old assembly back in, the old thermal valve assembly. I've got all the guts to put back in here anyway, but just a little trick for when you got a thing like this. So it's long, so you got a fair way to drive it in on these O-rings to make sure you get it in the right spot. Just use a longer bolt, pick up one of the holes like this. So here's our oil hole, lines up with that hole we talked about before. So you just get it started, so that's the orientation, and then just get a longer bolt, pass it right through, and that's your guide bolt then for the rest of this to be pulled in. So at least when it lands, these other holes here are going to line up with the mounting holes. So in it goes. We're just being careful with them O-rings just to make sure they skid over, and that's on probably far enough for those original bolts, little short ones to go on. We'll get them on. I did lightly lubricate those O-rings to make sure it was going to go in nice. We'll probably get a couple started. So they're definitely engaged in the thread. The rest of all this is pretty agricultural. So here is the spool out of the thermal valve. It's got a funny machining in the end. It's not that fantastic a fit in anything really, and even when I pull the new one apart, it's not that great. Here is what I think is actually the thermal valve. So it's like a crimped together little shuttle. From the looks of it, it's got a little chrome rod that extends when this thing heats up. In the very bottom, it's got the temperature stamped into it, in this case 70 degrees, and it just simply sits really crudely in there like that, and as it heats up, I'd say this extends and compresses the spring. Don't forget there's air pressure behind it as well, but there's nothing real special about it. I think the only thing that you've probably got to worry about is this thing ever sticking and not pushing this back far enough, because as you can imagine, it opens the ports that were drilled in the bore of this, and it all just preloads up against this fitting here, which is what the filter screws to. So you can see inside there's nothing at all. There's just lands like a normal spool. The whole lot of this just goes in there like that, nothing special. It's very loose, nothing seems worn. Like I said, I pulled the new one apart, it's all the same. There's a small taper here to pick the spring up as it goes in. There we go, it's gone straight in there now. Well, that didn't look real good, but anyway, it's definitely in there. I can't feel any pressure on the spring whatsoever. So, and now it's starting to push on the spring. Oh, is it? Yeah, just there. And that just tightens up, and then the oil filter screws onto that and just seals against this raised surface here, and that's about it. So it looks like air pressure pushes the oil out through here, up through the filter, down the bore of this, where it can radiate out through the ports in that spool, out into whatever galley. And there's one galley right here, going up in line with this fitting. There's another galley here, in line with this fitting. This one goes to the oil cooler, and the other one is return, whichever way around it is. I don't know. I've got them all marked anyway, so I'll hook them up again right the way around the right way later. But I'm pretty sure. I think when I checked all this, it shares the same galley as that oil galley that lubricates the screw. So you got cool, clean oil coming back. So I think what's happening is oil is constantly circulating all the time. I think what happens when it gets hot and that thermal valve starts to open at 70 degrees, which was what was stamped on the bottom of that little valve, I think all that happens is it opens it more and increases the oil flow, therefore taking more oil through the cooler and knocking the temperature down. And it probably just shuttles between whatever it can shed as heat to keep that 70 degrees open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. Because further than that, down here is a little temperature valve, temperature sender. This goes off to the controller. There's also a setting in the controller so that it won't even bring the compressor on load unless it's up to a certain temperature. So I think in cold climates this probably holds you out until temperature's built up. It just spins and spins and spins, and then once temperature has come up, it will actually let the compressor load. Once it's running, if it gets hotter and above 70 degrees, thermal valve opens, increases oil flow then through the cooler, and tries to maintain 70 degrees or slightly just a little bit higher, obviously. Alright, so here we've got the brand new oil filter from ELGI. Open him up, see what we got. Ooh, look at that, eh? See it back a little bit. It's just a little spin-on cartridge. Little spin-on. Nothing spectacular in there. A little bit of preservative paper. Stop any corrosion for long-term storage. It is. There's the part number. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Doesn't look like anything super special. I don't know what the beta rating for it is, or what particulate size it is. But anyway, as always, tiny little bit of oil on the face, clean oil. We'll go into oil a little bit later. A little bit on the thread. It's all nice. Screw them on. Until the O-ring just touches. There's the top there, and then all we're going to do is just snug it down. So there's half a turn, and that's just nice. That O-ring will hold on there. That face seal, just nicely. Part number at the top. Later on I'll get a paint pen, put the date on there when I eventually get this compressor running, so I know how old that is. And we'll just keep an eye on leaks in that when we fire it up. Here is the Air Oil Separator. The genuine one right here. Same thing, I've just put a little lick of compressor oil. There's the part number. It doesn't seem like anything special either. It's a bit hard to see in the light here with what's inside, but it's just a little spin on. Goes up here. Nothing special. Doesn't look like anything special. I'll go through the prices of all this stuff later, but this was probably the most expensive consumable. I have to put the camera down. There we go. Got it nice straight, and that just spins on. Same thing. This is running system pressure. So what I will do is put the camera down and snug that down as well.